here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video we are going to go over update sets and just essentially explain what update sets are. Now if you're working with ServiceNow and you've ever wondered how changes move between instances, then this video is for you. Today we're breaking down update sets, what they are, why they matter, and how to use them like a pro. I've got a few videos around update sets and they all kind of talk about different areas around them. So there is one where I talk about best practices and kind of do a very detailed dive into that, and then also how to essentially capture data changes, and I'll list those videos at the end of this video so you can have a look at those. But in this video we're essentially just going to break down in a very short video what essentially update sets are, how to move changes between instances, what update sets don't capture, and best practices and pro tips. So let's start simple. An update set. What is an update set? An update set in ServiceNow is a collection of configuration changes that you make in one instance, like development, and then move to another instance like testing or production. Think of it like a container that tracks your work, forms, fields, business rules, scripts, all bundled together. Why do we need update sets? Great question. Why not just make changes directly in production? Well, the short answer is because that's very risky. Essentially, update sets help you to track changes, move configurations safely, avoid overwriting someone else's work, and maintain version control. So let's go through the basic workflow. So essentially, you create or select an update set in your dev instance. So let's go to update sets. So essentially I'm in the update sets just to show where this is. So essentially in your application navigator, if you just search for update sets, you'll see a bunch of this. Now essentially you want to go to your local update sets. Retrieve update sets is essentially where you push code up to another instance, and then essentially then you would see that in your retrieved update sets. But we're going to focus on the local update sets. So if I select local update sets here, you can see I've only got one default update set, and we'll talk a little bit about default update set and why not to use them going forward. But essentially here we can create or select an active update set. So let's create an update set. So firstly I'm going to click on new, and over here is where I put the name for the update set. Now usually there should be a naming convention you use in your organization, and it's just essentially the naming convention depends on what your organization documentation is or what's essentially been established, but usually rule of thumb, let's say we'd put the initials of the developer, so I'm just going to put W for now. And then essentially we'll put in an underscore and then put in a story number that's relevant to the requirement. So I'm just going to put like 1 as an example. Then I might put the product. So today we're just going to really look at incident as an example. And then I might put a version, depending, as there might be other update sets that touch the same thing essentially going forward. So you might have a fix coming in after that you have to put v2 or v3 or so forth. So essentially I've got my update set name. I'm going to keep the state in progress. Parent we're going to keep empty. I'm going to talk a bit about parent and child in another very detailed video. Release date I can keep empty for now because I'm not sure when I'll look to release this, and then essentially description. Now description is where you should put in what this update set is actually going to contain, and this just helps when essentially pushing it up. Whoever's doing the release can ensure that this is the container, what it contains, and then looking at the changes to make sure and cross verify. So this update set will contain changes to the clear on hold reason business rule, and that's just to show a few changes and how it gets tracked essentially. Now application is very crucial here. When you create an update set, it will always create the update set in the application you're in. So You just need to make sure you're on the right application. How do you know if you're on the right application? So it depends essentially on what changes you're making. So whenever you're looking to make a change, the first thing you should probably look to do is check that component to see what application it is, and just make sure your update set essentially is in that right application. Now, if you are start working on an application in global, and then all of a sudden there's an item that you need to touch that's not in the global scope, don't worry. There is a way to essentially ensure that you can capture both. So you make all your global changes in one update set, and you might have a different update set for that specific application, and then you could group it together in a parent. And again, I go over that in another video, which I'll put in the link in the description. But essentially, you can manage it accordingly. But it's always best to see if you could do it from the start. Right, so now I'm just going to submit and make current. Now, make current is very crucial because essentially this tells me what my current update set is. And one way to check this is if you click on this kind of world icon, you can see here it tells me exactly what update set I'm in. And essentially, if I go into this, I can see I'm in progress. One other way to check is if I'm in the current update set. If I go back to the default update set or any other update set, basically what you'll see is this says make this my current set, and you won't see that essentially for the current set you're in. So another check to do, but the easiest one is just to take a look there. Okay, now step 2, all changes you make are automatically captured. So let's kind of show where that is. So as you can see here, we scroll down to the related list. It's what we call this. We have customer updates, update set logs, child update sets, and install history. Now customer updates is where you can see all the changes that this update set will essentially have. Now whenever you make a change on an item, depending on what the item is, and we'll go over that, it should automatically track those changes if you're in that current update set. So let's go to business rule. So I've just picked a kind of a random business rule, a clear on whole reason that's run on a table instance. And basically all I'm going to do is just add a change here. Now, one thing I do want to call out before I do this, you can see here the version. So this is where version control essentially is enforced. So we can see essentially what update sets have created this, update this, and so forth. Because this is out of the box, essentially there's no update set. But if I touch this, it should hopefully tell this was the name of the update set. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a message to this business rule, and I'm just going to say something like this has moved. This has cleared a on hold reason. Okay. Right. On hold reason, and now I'm just going to save this. Okay, great. Now what you can see here is there's 2 versions that essentially been created. There's the previous version that essentially this came from the kind of system upgrade essentially, and now my current update, which is essentially the current update set. I can see here, so I know that this is what has changed this business rule. So if I go back to my update set now and just do a quick refresh, what I'll see here is the customer update, the type business rule. This is essentially the customer update itself, and I could always go to the related record and the related links, and you can see the actual change here, or the actual record that's changing. A great thing to compare, if you need to compare to the previous update to understand, what the differences are, you could essentially compare the difference. Now, because the add message is not here, it's saying it's not the same, and that's essentially where description of the update set is kind of crucial, because you could essentially put, this is the reasons why I've changed this, or what the changes are, just to kind of help when someone's debugging what the changes are when releasing. Okay, so once I've done that, and essentially added the update set, and I'm happy with the update set, so let's go back to my update set. Okay, now the next step is essentially to mark the update set as complete. Now, easiest way is go to the update set and then essentially complete. Now there's a few ways to get to the update set. You can also always go to update sets. Would help if I typed that correctly. So yeah, let's go update sets, so local update sets. I can find it here as shown before. The other quick way is just to kind of go to your global icon if you're still in the current update set, click on it, and over here you'll see open record and it'll take me directly to the update set. Now I'm going to go and complete this update set, so just change the state to complete and essentially save this. Okay, so once you've done that, then essentially you would move it to another instance, and then essentially preview and commit it. So there's a few ways to move it to another instance. And it all kind of depends on how your organization is set up. The kind of manual way is to essentially export this to an XML. Now you need to click this button here, and this would essentially download an XML, and then you can import the XML, go to preview update sets, and essentially commit it. The other way to essentially do it is to have your remote instances kind of lined up, and then you could essentially pull from your test instance connected to your dev. So we can kind of talk about that in another video, if you essentially want to go into that deep dive of how to move update sets, the kind of pros and cons between each. But essentially the next step would be to essentially move to the next another instance and then preview and commit, and then boom, your changes are applied. So all the changes below here that's captured by this update set would apply to that next instance. Now let's talk about what update sets don't capture. Now this part is super important because this part is super important because they don't include data records like users or incidents. So if I'm making a change to an incident, and I'm changing the category of something, or I'm changing the user record, and I'm making users inactive, I'm adding attachments, or even some system generated changes, essentially they will not be included in update sets. So it's always double check what's included before moving anything. But there is a way to essentially capture data if that is something you want to push up. Now, there's a few best practices when it comes to moving data. So generally, when you're trying to update data, best practice is essentially either load data manually via a import set, have it transformed, and then essentially do that on the production table, or do a bulk update, update jobs. But essentially, if you are doing some sort of development where you do need to kind of make the changes in dev and then push it up the stack, you can use update sets for it. And there is a video I talked about how to use a UI action that essentially comes from a community feature that someone's put together, which is a great feature, and I'll post the video here so you can take a look at that. And essentially that allows you to add data and records to an update set and push it up the stack. But be cautious when doing that. I think best practice is not to move data. There is a way to do it, but generally you want to steer clear if you can, and to kind of use the best practice when it comes to updating data. Are you doing it directly on production via update jobs, or essentially using your import set and transform maps? Okay, so let's talk about the common mistakes and what to avoid. So I think the main pitfall that I've seen essentially is forgetting to select the correct update set. This is very crucial, and it's always best to get into the habit very early on, that you're always, when you're doing a requirement, you work on one thing at a time, you create an update set, you capture it, and then you essentially get it to complete, and essentially move it up before you start on another, because one thing you don't want is to have different requirements in one update set or across many update sets, and essentially become very confusing. Leaving changes in the default update set is another common mistake, and you should always make sure you're not on the default update set. Now, essentially, if you do find that you made a customer update set or customer update in the incorrect update set, you can always move that particular update over to your new update set, or your active update sets. But generally, it's always best to see if you could just kind of go back and do the change, you capture it in the right update set. Not previewing before committing. Essentially, this can lead to unresolved conflicts or essentially failed deployment. So it's always good just to preview what the changes could essentially impact the user or the system, and then essentially before committing, just check all those conflicts. And I guess the last one is ignoring the conflicts. Essentially, if you don't look into and investigate the conflict and you essentially just push it up, you could be opening up a can of worms. So it's always good to double check. And essentially, that's why we have a dev stack. We essentially move from dev to test to potentially staging, and then potentially then production, or testing to production. It all depends on how your organization stack is essentially configured. Now, let's talk about some pro tips. So, essentially, here's some quick pro tips. Best practices. Use one update set per feature or task. Don't try to make massive update sets. Keep them small and manageable. Keep them very focused on what the requirement is. If there is for separate requirements, have them in different update sets. You can always batch them into parent. So essentially, you push one update set up, but having separate update sets, being very clear what that update set is in the description, is just going to help manage it so much better. Always test in a sub-prod instance first. Please. It's always a good thing to do. It's just make your changes, even if it's small. And you expect it to work literally 100% of the time. It's always good just to check, test it, and use the scriptures to document changes. I think that one is always kind of missed, because as a developer you do get very busy and you tend not to put it in the description, but it really does help when you're pushing up code and update set, so you can see exactly what changes are going in for the update set. And if you do have any concerns, that you might see some update sets that have similar descriptions, that then allows you to investigate. And that's it. Update sets explained. Essentially, to conclude, update sets are a fundamental mechanism in ServiceNow for managing configuration changes across the environment. By understanding their capabilities, limitations, and best practices, teams can ensure smoother deployments. I hope this helped. If this has helped you understand ServiceNow a little bit better, hit that like button, subscribe for more tutorial. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments, and I'll try my best to reply, and I do reply to everyone. And I hope this helped. Thank you. Bye.